Stand, please, and please go back to the room. We will have the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call of trustees.
Trustee Hardcastle,
Present.
Trustee Davies,
Here.
Trustees Campbell,
Here.
Trustee Sorrell,
Here.
Trustee Balduzzo.
Here.
Thank you. Approval of agenda.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I make a motion to approve the agenda, please.
thank you, Dave.
I will second.
Thank you, John. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I didn't ask for discussion, I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay, at this time, we need to go into an executive session for IC 74-2061AJ.
Madam Chair,
John,
I move that we move into executive session for Idaho Code 74-2061 parentheses A parentheses J parentheses.
thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, so for this one, we do require a roll call vote. So if you would call that, please.
Okay, Trustee Hardcastle,
Yes.
Trustee Davies,
Yes.
Trustees Campbell,
Yes.
Trustee Sorrell,
Yes.
Trustee Balduzzo.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we will go to the other room. And just a little while. Don't gamble.
The recording is still going.
Because I just didn't need it.
She needs to know it. I'd like to. And regular session at 6:11.
Madam Chair,
Superintendent Raymond.
at this time, it's the blue ribbon recognition. Again, the 4 Rs as part of our behavior intervention program here. Respect to self, respect to others, respect to surroundings, and respect to learning. At this time, I invite board members to recognize either individuals or groups for their contribution to the school community.
Sad to say, I don't have one this time. I was in a little hole at home and wasn't out and about, so I didn't get to do that this time. I'm sorry. Anybody else?
Madam Chair, if I
John?
could, sorry. You want to go?
I'm good.
It's up to you.
Just as long as you don't do my part.
Oh, okay, well, no, I don't think I will. I want to thank whoever's in charge of the Notice Junior, Senior High Facebook page, because I did not get to go to the football game this past week, but it was so cool to see all of those pictures, especially the student section. It was nice to see the kids sitting next to each other.
Hey.
That would be Miss Wright.
Well, then I take it back. I wanted you to see that I paid my debt.
Thank you, sir.
But I thought that was absolutely cool. Thank you very, very much. It was nice to see the students, teachers, parents, all out there. It was really cool.
Mine, I kind of want to recognize Donita Tincher for the work that she's been doing. We didn't have a business manager for quite a while, and so there was stuff going on. We had somebody helping us out, but she has plowed through all of that work, and I'm just gonna say I think it probably was kind of messy, and so I think she's done a great job at getting us all situated, and I'm feeling better about sitting in this chair than I was 3 or 4 months ago. So I think I'd like to recognize Donita for doing her part in that.
Well, I'm gonna continue on with a little bit of what Don was talking about with the community making a big showing at the game, and I'd also like to include Mr. Barker in for allowing the team to use their barbecue to feed the other team before they went home on the 5 hour bus ride. So
Awesome.
that was fairly appreciated.
Very cool.
He's fed me a time or two in the past too, so I know what that's like.
Where's
He's
that
pretty
barbecue?
generous. And like last month, I want to thank Jess, Yovan, and Kayla for sticking it out. That was tough duty that they signed up for this year. We went through 10 negotiation sessions to work through a completely revamped, new and improved master agreement. And they did a great job. They really did, representing the teachers, doing their job. They did their job, we did our job, and I think that the district is going to be the beneficiary. So I want to again thank those 3 people for seeing it all the way through, giving up a lot of their summer. Many of you had the summer off. Those 3 individuals did a lot of work through the summer. So that's to be commended. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Gosh, there's a lot of things on here. I wish you guys all had this paper. I'm going to give a shout out to Charlene Ruda. She participated in a Harvard Med Science medical program during the summer. She is one smart cookie, and I think she deserves that recognition. Let's see that one here. And Johnny Ruda, EL paraprofessional, we're substituting for teachers that have been out sick. He filled in quite a few times, didn't he? So, I think that's pretty important to be able to have someone that we can lean on and know is going to be there for us.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to say anything? Okay, thank you. All right. Consider appointing trustee for zone 4.
This is the part where I leave.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Took my apples and my water. No.
Well, you're supposed to share those.
They're off my tree. They're delicious.
Do you want to?
Yeah.
Madam Chair. As of earlier this afternoon, we are down to a single candidate for trustee for Zone 4. Ms. Volchek, who had interviewed with us, notified us she will actually be moving out of the zone here within the next couple of weeks. And so we do still have candidate Jensen, who has interviewed with us. Chairman Hardcastle has asked candidate Jensen to still give your 3-minute remarks for public record, and then they will consider the appointment for the position. Oh, yeah, you can stay seated.
No,
Okay.
no, she. I can. I'm her coach, so I need to get her to be.
So, yeah, there you go.
Okay, I don't really introduce myself, are you good? I think everybody knows me, Josie Jensen. And I am running for this seat because I want to be a part of the school board that is an advocate for students, families, and teachers. I'm running because in the time we have been at Notice, we've had our share of ups and downs. And I want to be part of building on the success and working through our failures. I'm running because I have kids here. All parents want the best for their children, and I want to be a part of that for mine. My vision for our future, the district, is to continue to develop strong, well-rounded, confident, and responsible young adults and help them reach their goals. To have great relationships with teachers and staff and ensure they have all they need to be successful for our kids. To look at the growth that we cannot stop, that's coming our way. And figure out how we don't lose what we're known for here and who we are because of it. We are a true small town school with incredible teachers and an amazing community, and I don't want to see that change. Why should you put me on the board? Well, because in a nutshell, I'm all in. A few years ago, I knew we had a school board, but that was about the extent of my knowledge of what they stood for. I had no clue how important your roles are, or how important the voices of our families here at Notice are, or how powerful they can be. The past 3 years, I have jumped in headfirst into all of it. I have attended all board meetings, voiced my opinion on more than a few occasions, and have really come to understand the weight of that seat. And I'm still here. I hope you would take my involvement in the last few years into consideration when you vote this evening. Thanks for your time, and I hope to work with you all soon.
Can you have your copy?
You want my handwritten copy?
I will. Thank you, Jesse.
Madam Chair,
John,
are we ready for a possible appointment?
yes,
I move that we appoint Jesse Jensen to the Zone 4 trustee open position.
I second that motion.
any discussion? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, Ms. Jessie, you have been chosen to be our Zone 4 representative on the school board. Congratulations. Yep, at our next meeting, which is October 10th, we will bring you up here and you will be sworn in. And you've witnessed that before, so you know how that happens and everything. So everybody come out and support her when she gets sworn in. Okay, thank you. Okay. Approval of financial statements.
Consent.
Consent agenda, excuse me. I have here a approval for the consent agenda. I know there's a lot of stuff in there, a lot of minutes and financials.
For some reason, I thought I had a question, Madam Chair, but I'm not finding it, so.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda as stated.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I will say,
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Pass. Okay, so that takes us to number 6, public participation. Notice Education Association.
So on behalf of the NEA, I just want to thank the district's negotiation team again for working with us through many meetings throughout the summer. And we are proud of what the end result was. We want to thank you for negotiating in good faith, that we could bring that back to the teachers. And as you can see on the board docs, we were able to ratify that last week. And I also would like to just say that this last month we had our back to school meeting, and our executive team for the union looks forward to working with administration and the board in this coming year with any collaborations that we can support on. So.
Thank you. Elementary principal report.
Something, visitors.
I skipped down there, I'm sorry. Yeah, but we didn't have any visitors signed in to speak this evening, so, so we will go to student organization report, FFA.
Just tell Ms. Reynolds that we're on the, the very first tab.
Hi, how are you? Don't be surprised if I ask a question while you're talking.
thank you very much.
So this past summer, I had the privilege of attending Washington Leadership Conference in Washington, D.C., where it's a 7-week conference. So they have like 7 different sections with over 300 students each week. So this was the group that I got the privilege of going with. We took a group picture on the steps of the Capitol. And then we went with the group from Nampa School District, and we got to go meet Senator Russ Fulcher. talked with him for quite a while about different things that he's working on to help FFA and agriculture in general. We got to go see a lot of really cool historical monuments. This is a view from Arlington National Cemetery. And then while we were at Arlington, we got to watch the changing of the guards. That was really cool. We learned about all this stuff in history class, and it was really awesome to be able to stand there and watch it and see all the different monuments and all the different things and see it up close and in person and what actually happened. While we were there, Ms. Hernandez and I went and toured the Holocaust Museum. That was a lot. It was really moving, but it was a lot mentally to see. I didn't get too many pictures just because I was soaking everything in while we were there. And we were able to do all this stuff in between different leadership conferences and different things we did with our group. While we were there, we also had the opportunity to make over 70,000 meals for homeless people in that area. So that was really cool. The Idaho FFA Foundation Golf Scramble, we took members, myself, Carly Smith, Kylan Jensen, and Allison Fields, along with graduate Anna Berry. We were able to go and we took pictures with all of the different sponsors that help with that national or Idaho FFA, and that was really cool to see all of the different support from large and small businesses that we get. And then for the Can-Am raffle drawing, our officer team went and we got to be there when they drew the winner for the 2022 Can-Am with the Idaho Department of Agriculture Director Celia Gould. And then our picture from that was actually in the Idaho Farm Bureau quarterly newsletter.
And then we have our upcoming events. We have the Treasure Valley District Dairy Cattle Day on September 14th, and Miss Hernandez will be kicking up a group of kids. And then we have the TBD Leadership Night at Valley View on September 26th, and we're trying to take as many kids as we can. And then we have the Regional Soils Contest in Cambridge on September 29th, and Mr. Barker will be taking it.
Did you both go to Washington DC or just the one of you?
Just me. I
Okay,
was the
so
only
one
student.
one from Notice went
Yes.
this year?
Yep, I was the only student from Notice this year.
Did one go last year?
They haven't held a conference in 2 years, right?
Yeah, the past two.
Yeah, the past 2 summers they haven't held it because of COVID.
Okay. Well, that's super.
Yeah.
And how long were you there?
We were there from July 12th to July 17th, so
Oh.
5 days. Right in
Yeah,
the middle of
that's nice.
summer, it was very humid.
Yeah.
Full 5 days.
Yes,
We never
That's
stopped.
great. Trip of a
A
lifetime.
lot of experience and history.
Very cool.
it was awesome.
Congratulations, that's great.
Thank you.
We'll never forget that.
We'll never forget that.
Thank you. You guys do a fantastic job. We really appreciate the FFA department. Okay. Okay, now we'll have the elementary principal report.
Madam Chair, thank you. Quick correction in my header. The document is saved as September 12th, but the header indicates that it's August 8th. That is incorrect. I failed to update that, but just a quick snapshot of our enrollment by class there. We'll just kind of hit some highlights of some of the things rather than going point by point. We're starting to find a routine and some progress with our 6th grade experiment. I just want to say thank you to the teachers that are and parents that are in the audience of our 6th graders. We will be conducting some stakeholder surveys and some community meetings about the future planning for sixth grade and how it might look moving forward. Also, just want to highlight the Cultivating Readers Project. This is something that was started last year with Ms. Wright as the building principal. We are continuing our work with the State Department of Education in this project. We do have a site visit with a reading specialist that's paid for by the state coming in to do some work with our teachers here the beginning part of October. And so it'll be a good professional development opportunity for us. And then Mr. Holm is starting to settle in at the elementary school and working with him on some conflict management tools and resources to help provide some choices for kids when things don't quite go their way, so that they can respond appropriately with appropriate responses rather than inappropriate words or actions. And so those are just some things at the elementary school.
Are the kids getting used to having a person in that office back there with a beard? I mean, it's a big change for them. Are they getting used to that?
I get a lot of hugs every day.
You do? Okay, good.
Unless Miss Wright is standing next to me.
Okay.
Traders.
Okay, branch coordinator report.
Hi, yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So I would like to add Mr. Barker, I'm gonna put him on the spotlight because we did receive that Idaho Division of Career Tech grant.
Oh.
Super excited about the renovation project that will be happening. So Mr. Barker, you want to speak to that for just a moment?
Sure. This was the Idaho Leads grant opportunity that Governor Little put $4 million into post-secondary CTE programs and a bucket of $4 million for secondary CTE programs. 117 put in for it. The school district put in for that in secondary level. The ask by those combined, the aggregate of that ask was over $10 million. They funded 54 school districts, which Norris is one, and took care of that $4 million pretty quick. Asked around with some of my ag teacher buddies, hey, you put in, have you heard anything yet? 18,000. Feeling pretty good. Oh, I got 22,000. What did you get? I said, oh, I got a little bit more. So without really telling them. So it's 117 and change, I think. So with that, we'll be able to do electrical upgrades so that there'll be 220 drop-down reels in around the shop in that production area. And then a great big $35,000 hydraulic iron worker, hydraulic metal press, and it cuts, and it bends pipe, and it copes pipe, so you can do saddle joints. So if you were making like livestock panels, for example, it's got lots of attachments that go to it. And then a $35,000 new plasma cutter. The one that we had out there, I was going to ask Tyndall, was probably bought them about the same time, about 20 years ago. And it's pretty wore out. It hasn't been, I haven't fired it up since I've been here because it had some broken things with it. It's a 4 foot by 4 foot table. So the new one we'll be getting is a 5 by 10 foot table. And because I know the safety inspector is always worried about the ventilation system of the plastic cameras. No, it's never been fired up. He always mentions it each year. This comes with a water table. So that negates the ventilation system because the water table soaks up all that smoke. And so that'll be a good thing. And then all the auxiliary things that go with that, set of 4 computers for the students to learn how to do the software, a new air compressor, and we're going to take out all the black pipe tubing, the black pipe for all the air vents that are, I'm sure, original from when it was built in 2000, because that collects moisture and then it turns to rust, and then anytime you plug and unplug with high pressure air, it gets you a nice sandblast of rust in the face. So we'll be taking that all out, putting aluminum tubing in. It's got a special coating. It's what's industry standard that's used in fabrication shops, working closely with Norco on that, on all these things to make sure to get things installed correctly. We've reached out several industry large shop folks to come in and say, if you had a blank pallet, what would you put where? We started that process today. I told them I had to meet with superintendent and after tonight's meeting on this and work through how this is all going to get processed. And so I thought, today's lesson. So I listed all these things in random order up on the board. I'm like, what would you do? How would you go about an order of operations? What has to happen first? And I got two brilliant ideas. I mean, they were just like, well, we're going to do this. And they're like, so it's fun for the kids to kind of have some buy-in, some ownership. They're going to be able to do some amazing things. So a new drill press, air compressor, sander, a new bandsaw. So they'll pretty much have everything ready. So pretty excited about that.
Mr. Barker, I noticed what we didn't get the LED shop lights. My question has to do with, will that affect instruction in any way? And are those shop lights needed from a safety point of view, or is it simply an energy conservation measure that you were trying to implement that didn't get funded? Talk to those lights for me.
Yes, on both accounts. So put that in there with the electrical contractor when we were doing the electrical upgrades. And it's that stuff. It's very, very good. So we put in LEDs plus motion sensors. I'm really a fan of motion sensors. I mean, when I was principal superintendent, we put motion sensors in every hallway we could. Because I started coming home late and I didn't see the entire high school look like it because everybody got shut lights off. So we put all that in, and it is. So it didn't get funded. I got the call that, well, this is the one thing we had to take out. And it didn't meet the river criteria. And like, that not be a safety thing. It's like, how do I reword this? And I was like, you're getting 118, just take it. Okay. So I'm working with the electric contractor, and I've got a former student who runs the program for Iowa Power for rebates for schools. Yeah. And so I talked to Danny today, and so I'm getting those two folks hooked up so that we can get an actual true cost of what it would be. And then when we meet, we'll be able to put that forth and see if it's something that we want to move forward with. And I see that what she can do with Iowa Power is once they decide the exact model that they're going to go with, they'll show a cost return on in X years it will pay for itself. Right. So while we're doing this whole thing, it would be really nice to get that done.
Yep.
Including the other thing too is because they said the lights don't really relate to the equipment, but the power overhead doors for the shop doors, that counts. I'll take it. So that'd be nice.
Trustee Davis. It is something that we'll be discussing with our maintenance and facilities committee.
Yeah, I think so. If it's a safety issue at all around that power equipment, I think it should be on this.
I'll look back, Dave, the VCEF I did on the egg shop, 32-foot candles is what is considered a normal, well-lit classroom. Okay. There's about 14 to 15-foot candles in that egg shop with the existing lights, so a little efficient there.
Right.
Less than a normal classroom.
Less than a normal classroom, which is why I would support it being on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Barker.
And then to finish up the grants report, so we were awarded the 2C Kids Succeed Phase 2. So another set. This 25,000 of that will hopefully go towards a elementary playground expansion for the preschool and primary grades. So that's something that we started last year under Mr. Duramus when he was the special ed director. So I'm hoping that we can continue that work. And then our Mastery Ed, I did finish that application and submitted that. That was about $10,000 for each building. So those are our grants that I'm working on. Any questions on those?
Good work.
Yeah. Good work, Jen. That's great.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Jen. Okay, Federal Programs Director's report.
Okay, that's me too.
Yes, it is.
Today I spent most of the day at the Federal Programs Conference with a lot of familiar faces. And I did want to point out that one point of data that I think is important, that our students that have been identified under the McKinney-Vento Homeless Act, we've increased about almost 10%. So we just want to make sure that we're continuing our efforts, supporting our students, our families that are doubled up, our families that just need some additional support. So thankfully we have our community schools coordinator and then additional staff and that counseling social worker role, so I'm excited about that too.
So Jen, at the conference today, has there been a change in McKinney-Vento such that students who aren't living with one of their parents, but they're living with an aunt or an uncle or a brother, they're considered under the McKinney-Vento kind of umbrella? Is that not true?
Absolutely, sir. And then also students that are not living with any family member, is called unaccompanied youth. And so we just want to keep them in school and provide the resources that they
Right,
need.
so they can be an unaccompanied youth, or they can be accompanied but with an extended family member, not their mother or father, and still qualify for those benefits that.
Even if their mother and father are living with them, if they're doubled up at a relative's home, that still counts as well.
Okay, very good.
That's it.
Thank you, Jen. Okay. Junior, senior high principal report.
I just wanted to point out that our homecoming game, October 8th, that date looked different to me. We would like to recognize Mrs. Mary Eileen Long, and did confirm that with her family. So we're trying to keep it on the down low and a surprise because Mary doesn't have social media, and I don't think she's watching tonight's board meeting, but if she is, hello. But we would like to recognize her during that homecoming game, and hoping if our walking path is installed, we'll do a little ceremony at the beginning. If not, we'll plan to our student council in the homecoming court to recognize her.
Friday's the 7th.
Okay, so it is the 7th. I knew that was wrong. Sorry about that.
The seventh.
Dance is on you.
Friday the 7th, yes. And then there'll be invitations that we're working on getting printed. And then later on, we'll talk about our one-to-one devices. That's a big move forward for our students. Everything's been going great. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Okay, superintendent report?
Madam Chair, just again, a quick snapshot of enrollment from the district perspective. You can see that we are currently, as of the 4th of September, sitting at 329 students K through 12. We're still getting a few here and there, but we are still also having a handful transfer back and forth. Some changes in our staffing that we'll discuss in our personnel report later. We do still have some openings in the classified area, particularly an admin assistant at the elementary school. Food service is still looking for a part-time food server. I'm always looking for that ever elusive bus driver. And then a Title I para as well as some supplemental coaching positions. Volleyball season is underway, but we're still short of JV volleyball coach there as well. Just quick updates around CASA staffing. When I started this report, we're fully staffed by CASA. That is no longer the case. We are now down to the same level of staffing we were at last year, which is one staffing position less than was funded for this year for Notice. Still trying to work with special education leadership at CASA to make sure that we have a plan in place to make sure that our kids are getting the services and supports that they need. This is an important note just for the board to keep in mind. Originally, when the preschool program for CASA was moved to the Notice School District, there was an agreement made with CASA that has not been memorialized in any written agreement, so to speak, but that Notice would host the developmental preschool program, and CASA would provide a paraprofessional support that would support the developmental preschool program, but also our treasurer's general education preschool program, because we would have CASA students that attended those programs as well. They have currently provided a half-time position to cover the developmental preschool programs, but have not, and I do not believe intend to, make that a full-time position or find the other half-time to support our general education preschool. So that'll be a point of discussion likely moving forward as we talk about other CASA-related issues. Trustee Davies?
If I could interrupt just for a minute, I want to ask a question about the CASA piece before you go on with the rest of the report. And that is, I think I heard you say there's one position that hasn't been filled yet. That's a CASA position that we're waiting to be filled. And then there's half a position with this pre-K. So there's like 1.5 positions that are open here.
Correct.
Okay, my question is a budgetary question. We get a bill from CASA once a year, and it's non-negotiable. They give us a bill and we have to pay it.
And they're asking for more.
And the implication is that we'll receive the services that are attached to that bill. So my question is there a credit back to us when these positions go unfilled for a portion of the year or the entire year? Fair is fair, is it not?
There is not a credit back.
Yeah.
We are required as a district to pay our maintenance of effort, which is our per pupil basis that we are required to pay for special education. So the fact that we pay our dollar amount directly to CASA actually eliminates us having to track and making sure that we're spending additional dollars to support our special needs students. So CASA maintains that money in their reserve or carry forward amounts, but the districts do not get any of that money back.
So what if we were how many positions does CASA staff here at is it 6 or 7? How many FTEs are here on the note for the benefit of notice students? Maybe I should ask it that way, because some of you there, some of you, that we're paying for.
Roughly about 3.8 teaching certified positions that we pay for. We pay for about 0.34 administrative positions. And I would say on the Notice campus, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 classified positions that should be full-time, that we're sitting at 3.5 right now.
And it's these classifieds that are part of your report here.
Correct. And then we also have other students that attend other programs that have staffing allocations attached to them. So we have one student in a single program in Wilder. We have another student in a different program in Wilder. We have a handful of students in the program that's located in Wilder. So it's hard to break it down specifically on those shared programs, but specific on campus, we have 5 classified.
So I'll say this to John and to you, because you attend those board meetings, and that is, I have a hard time reconciling this discrepancy between paying the full bill and getting part of the services. I'm just telling you, from where I sit, maybe that's an oversimplification, but that's how it feels right here.
We both feel the same way.
You do? Okay.
So wait, just for clarification, you said we need full-time and a half-time. That's what we need.
Classified.
That is currently what has been allotted to Notice by CASA administration that is unfilled. Out of
So how many of those are
approximately
certified?
18 unfilled positions, those are all classified
Yeah.
All classified.
So we need 1.5 classified.
for CASA.
Just for us, that there's 18 that they're short CASA-wide.
Which means some of our kids aren't getting the attention they need
No kidding.
from these parents. And these are the kids who really need the help. I'm preaching to the choir here, but so that's my concern, and I wanted to voice that before you go on.
Want to share with the board that we did submit the L2 form to the county clerk's office indicating our levy asks for the year. Shows there we did the $203,000 as per the board direction for the plant facilities levy. The CASA levy amount ended up at $266,787,000. Again, that's based on the statutory limitation of 0.1% there. Brief analysis just following that, because it's going to come up in a discussion for a later item. Our out-of-pocket expenditure projection this year for CASA for both the CTE programs and special education is is $382,147. In doing this analysis, the budget that was put forth and approved in the June budget hearing showed a revenue line item of $323,481, which is a difference of just shy of $57,000 than the actual revenue we will be receiving. So our actual cost beyond the CASA levy is $115,360, roughly about 30% of the entire cost for CASA.
You're making my point beautifully.
Are you tracking that?
I'm tracking that, yeah. But there's a gap there between what we had in our budget and what is actually happening. Is that part of what you're telling us?
There's a significant gap in the projected revenue. The proposed and approved budget for FY23 showed a revenue item of $323,000 for the
We're going to
CASA
receive
levy.
more revenue than
We're receiving less.
Less
We're
by
receiving
50
by $57,000.
57. So there's a $57,000 gap on the revenue side.
That will need to come out of carry forward or ESSER funds left over.
And was this where you were suggesting an amended budget at some point?
That's the next item in the,
It's because of this.
in addition to many other things, yes.
But the L2, I want to back up there
Sure.
on the plant facilities piece. I mean, there's a lot packed in here, Micah. The $203,000 for plant facilities will not cover our obligations for our ABM contract. Is that true?
That is correct.
So there will be a shortfall in that account as well at the end of the year.
It will take into account carry forward amount.
There is a carry forward amount. That carry forward amount will diminish significantly.
Correct. And I have some numbers to share on that item later in the meeting. as
Very
well.
good. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on that as well before we blow past that. Thank you.
A quick question, Michael.
Sure.
Why was that revenue lower for CASA and projection?
I couldn't tell you that. That was the number that we were given by directly from the county clerk's office.
It makes
county
sense
assessor.
because, assessed valuation being up, if anything, as Dave said, should have been more than less.
So as Trustee Sorrell indicated earlier, Donita has been doing a lot of work to kind of sift through and work at that. A lot of that work has been done with Jen Wright, looking at grant funds, making sure that we're asking for money that we're eligible to receive reimbursements for. There is a significant number of some of those grant funds that we were unable to recoup because they were not encumbered appropriately. And so as we're looking at all of these things, we feel that it will be prudent once we get the official audit back in October at the next board meeting, that we present a new budget hearing in November, just to make sure that we're clear with our community and with you guys as well as to what money we have and where that money needs to be allocated in order to move the needle forward, rather than continuing to carry just a $500,000 carry forward line item there. I have nothing else to offer other than what's been provided in writing regarding the code review that Trustee Davies had asked me to look at. Are there any questions regarding either of those two issues, Trustee Davies?
No,
Okay.
that looks consistent with how I read the statute, so thank you.
And same with the treasurer's type and the business manager job description. Nothing else to add there as well.
I do, though.
Sure.
I would just like to reiterate to my fellow board members, if we're asking a person to do an extra job, I think there should be compensation that goes with it. If you can find it, if you can't, then so be it. But that's my feeling about that person doing that work. Whoever that person is should be recognized beyond, thank you very much, we expected you to do it anyway, or whatever that is. I think there should be some compensation that goes with that to keep them active, involved, engaged, and it just is the way they do. Thank you.
I still have like 3 pages to go through, so I'm just going to kind of glance over that. I will stand for any questions written on any of those things. A couple of highlights from that. We will be required this year to provide dyslexia training to all certified staff before the conclusion of this school year. We do have some dates that the state is providing to us that is based on our participation in the Cultivating Readers Project. Dates are to be determined. It's a 2-hour, 2-day, 1 week in the middle of October, or a 4-hour session on a Saturday. We recognize that that is outside of contract time and will likely need to stipend those. So we will work with the teachers union to make sure that we provide that training appropriately and make sure that people are compensated appropriately for that as well. Also, just want to indicate our school activity accounts. We will be bringing this policy for review, just to update. It has not been updated since 2009. There's been some significant change to the recommended policy, particularly around the accounting of cash collection with school accounts. And so we just want to make sure that we're protecting our staff and our students and our school revenues by bringing that up to speed. You can see that our district free and reduced numbers are up back over 50%. We've served a significant number of meals since school started, and we're sitting about 70% of our students participate in our food service program, which is a pretty sizable number again. So just want to give some kudos to our food service department for the work that they're doing there. Lots of things in our transportation department. Our fleet is struggling. And so we're working to build a plan. We've got 2 buses in the shop currently. We have 3 buses. We're trying to determine whether or not we can get them student safe. So we'll have some more information for you on that. And then one thing that I want to make sure that I include that I did not in my report, and I apologize, I had been doing some work on it and I intended to put it in, but just want to bring to your attention is the funding from the state, the pass-through funding for certified instructors and pupil services, House Bill 793. The terminology the State Department uses is the SLRF. The SLFRF funding. We do have a number on that, and we are working right now to identify the recipients of that pass-through money, and as well as allocate our pro-rata share to CASA for the employees that we share there. We are anticipating a combined total of just under $53,000 for salary and benefits. There, again, not all of that will go to notice teachers. Only teachers and pupil services staff are eligible for that payout. Roughly, the estimate was $1,588 and change per staff. Plus the benefit allowance. So I know that has been discussed a lot in negotiations. Our intent is to have a plan built for board approval for the final authorization of that pass-through funds, and that those go out in October after the October board. And with that, I will stand for any questions on anything I did not cover directly.
So can you tell me, just from that report, I've seen some other things, but where is money coming from the general fund? Like I'm trying to tell.
For?
Like, cause you said that the cost of levy, I saw that there was a 57,000, but then it doubled in that report. that would be covered by the general fund.
The $57,000 is not reflected in the current adopted budget. So that's $57,000 that would come from the carry forward general fund. We have several other things tonight that will highlight those as well. Yeah.
Running tally.
Yes, sir.
I noticed that, one of your items, you're suggesting that a subcommittee be formed here at the board level
Oh, yes.
to look at policy, and I'm wondering if that should be part of an action item or something in a future meeting. And I'm specifically referring to your section regarding policy. Your policy manual review, where you're recommending a smaller contingent of the board work with you to review the entire policy manual. That sounds like fun. Come on, you guys. Dig in.
It's a
You're gonna
full-time
love it.
job.
Yeah.
As previously indicated, there are portions and sections of our policy manual that are significantly out of date. And in talking with ISBA, it is not necessary that the entire board review the entire policy manual in full. That can be delegated specifically to the superintendent and or worked in a smaller subset with other board members that does not constitute a quorum. So that's that issue there. Again, with just getting our 25 or however many policies we've been dealing with for a couple of months taken up, I recognize that going through every policy as an entire board is just too cumbersome. And so just wanted to bring that up front. So.
I'm not throwing in like that. What I have done in the past is had board members agree to individually look at policy so that it's not just stuck with a couple, but I had all 5 of mine review different pieces and give recommendations, and then myself and them, yourself and them, it worked well and helped the load not be on the burden of a few board members doing them all.
And then finally, I don't recall if it was in your superintendent report or your principal report, one of you two mentioned handbooks, student handbooks.
That's in the superintendent report as well. So now that negotiations have concluded, we have a very rough draft of this year's staff handbook that we will work with.
And my comment here is, it seems like we could be more proactive with student handbooks than we have been.
This
in
is
the
a
past.
staff handbook.
I'm thinking about student handbooks, but yeah, perhaps the board could consider getting that on the annual calendar back in April or so to get those student handbooks reviewed for the next year if possible.
Student handbooks should come in roughly the May board meeting, correct? And staff handbooks, again, part of it was just the late start of the staff transition at the administrative level and the office level. And then with negotiations running late, that we're going to get caught up on the staff handbook here shortly as well.
Very good, thank you.
I was waiting to know. Okay, second reading of ISBA policy update.
Madam Chair.
Superintendent Micah.
These are the legislative edits that take current notice policy and red letter, show the specific changes recommended to policy. There are a handful of policies that we have pulled out of consideration since the first reading. Those are listed in board docs under your administrative content tab. Those are specifically to the graduation requirement and the self-directed learner policy. As we had the opportunity to have one meeting with staff, it was a very quick, very early morning meeting that upon further reflection, we'd like some more time to talk with teachers in depth on recommendations for that policy. And then the graduation requirements, again, really revolves around recommendations specifically as being recommended for review because the state legislature has removed the math requirement for 4 years of math. Our teachers would like to maintain that requirement, but there's some discussion as to whether or not we should maintain the word processing graduation requirement and a couple of other requirements that we might see in this coming legislative session. So the graduation requirements at this time, we're not prepared to make a recommendation to change that policy. And then skipping briefly ahead to the new business item 9B, in review of several of these policies, it was noticed that several of the policies numbers had actually changed from what notice policy was, and or notice had failed to adopt the policy that was referenced in these new policies. And so that's why there is now a second spot of first reading policies under new business that I just recommend be caught up and kind of kept in conjunction with this group of policies. So at this time, if there are specific questions around any of these individual policies, I'd be happy to provide an answer.
Any questions?
I asked all mine last month. I did. Regarding the one you pulled off the table with the math, I haven't been part of those discussions, but on the face of it, I would support the idea that we maintain a more rigorous math curriculum than the state minimum of 3 years.
And that is the recommendation of the teachers, and that's the recommendation likely of administration. Right now, the discussion will be around other graduation requirements.
Right. Just, you brought that up, and to me, that's how that would play out.
Superintendent, on 9B, you said those three were, like number changes, but on 24-25, like parental rights, it's all red.
24-25 is a brand new policy that should have been adopted by notice previously that is not. And it is referenced in one of the other policies that's already in second reading. So in talking with ISBA, it was recommended that we implement this policy in conjunction with the other policy updates.
Well, if I might throw in, for the board's sake, ISBA spends a lot of time looking through, revising these policies, so I never had a doubt that the majority of their revisions weren't done in good stead, legal as well as well-written. And I recommended most often that my board look at those with the thought that shouldn't need a wholesale change of those, but ones that are notice specific, yes, but the ones that are new with ISBAs, pretty good to go with them just the way they are. So that puts a little bit of pressure off of you guys saying they're there and they're done well. Because every district that subscribes to ISBA get the same thing you get.
So at this time, I would recommend approving second reading and pass them on to a third and final reading.
Madam Chair,
John?
I move that we move the ISB policy updates from 8A onto a third reading.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion?
I want to verify that, we haven't talked about the master agreement yet in open meeting, but it does reference a couple of policies where a committee needs to be formed if those policies are ever reviewed. None of those policies are in play here. Is that a true statement?
That's a true statement.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, all those in favor of moving forward the ISBA policy updates to third reading? Third reading.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, CASA classified salary increase. John? Is that one of those?
Pardon?
Are they?
Oh, no,
No.
this isn't mine.
But he gets to speak to it
Okay,
as the council board rep.
okay,
Thanks.
sorry, I was.
As you mentioned, Mr. Davies, one of the issues that we've had at CASA is that, when we came back in August, they were approximately 20 to 21 paras short, unable to hire. One of the reasons that they've kind of surmised has been the reason that they can't hire anybody is the districts around us are paying a lot more. They actually had one employee who had been working for the district over 10 years. Her intent was to stay there, but she could not give up $15 an hour compared to the $12 an hour that she was currently making. So I know I believe it was at the May board meeting, we made the decision to keep the old pay scale at 1050. Is that correct?
I believe so.
And they are now requesting that we move it to 1250, which changes the amount of money that we pay to them. If you look at the other board, you'll see that they're requesting approximately $12,900, approximately $13,000. One of the things that Superintendent Drimis did ask was if we don't get those employees hired, do we have to pay this? So as far as I know, we have not gotten the answer to that question, but that has been brought up because of maintenance of effort not being met. So that's kind of where we sit for right now.
We are anticipating a vote at the council board meeting next Monday, where we will be asked as a board to approve this. And I've had a couple of conversations with some of the other superintendents. In my mind, I see these as two separate issues. I see it as a salary scale raise as one issue. I see it as a request for additional support as a separate issue. The other superintendents do not believe that will be how it will be approached. It will be a package deal. You either approve all of it and approve the additional expenditure beyond your budgeted amount, and the salary increase, or none of the above. And there are 2 additional board meetings happening right now throughout CASA that I don't believe that those districts will be in support of the pay raise if it leads to this request for additional support. The other thing that issue that I raised that I think is worth noting, though I'm still not sure that anybody really understood it, is that this raises our maintenance of effort out of pocket per student. It's about $300 per student for this year, when the original request was raising it $3 per student. And that is a maintenance of effort you cannot ever spend less than per student moving forward. And so it's a perpetual increase for future budgets as well, to request support in this manner. So we've posed some questions to the CASA team that we have yet to receive answers. And so this is just an opportunity for you guys as a board to discuss and provide some guidance for Trustee Baldazzo as a representative of the CASA board and how to represent the Novus board at next week's meeting.
I happen to know one of the classified people, but she does an excellent job here at Novus, has for years, will continue to do so. She needs a raise. However, that coming out of a general fund, I'm keeping a tally over here, that kind of scares me too. So how do we do both?
The issue for me is not unlike the issue we were dealing with teacher negotiations. At a very high level, what you find yourself faced with is, we need to pay people a fair wage. But if we pay people a fair wage, can we employ this many people? Or will it have to drop to this many people in order to pay a fair wage? You can't really have both and sustain it for a long period of time unless something changes on the revenue side. You get more students, or you pass a supplemental levy, or the state dips into their coffers even more and gives us more. Something has to change on the revenue side, because let me also say this, the living wage, let's talk about a living wage. This person who works here, I don't know who that person is, doing a great job. A 2-income household with 2 children, those 2 adults in that household need to earn $15.60 an hour working full-time in order to make what's called a living wage. If they're not making $15.60 an hour today, working full-time, they're going backwards or living at the poverty level, or something is going wrong in that household where they're not able to take care of business like they should. And so we're talking about going from $10 to $12. Part of me says we should be talking about going to $15.60 as a minimum wage for anybody who works for this school district full time. And if that means we have to have fewer of them, so be it. But that is a just wage in my book. Now, having fewer special ed teachers may not square with some federal mandate. You may have to have so many people for this class of student. There might be other rules in play. But at a high level, that's how I see this. $12.50 doesn't even cut it for me. For a full-time anybody in this district, $12.50 does not cut it.
So those votes you have, John, simple majority of the notice gets 2 votes, you and
It's actually 1.
1,
It's whoever is the representative, it's 1 per district.
and then a majority vote determines from all the districts.
Yeah, from the 5.
Yeah. So 3, take
Or
3.
6, right? 6?
No, it's only 5.
Okay.
Costa does not do
So
it.
3, you have to vote affirmative to approve.
Dave, I sit in the same place you do, in that I don't want to dip into our coffers because of what Micah mentioned, in that it'll be there forever. But, it's $12.50. It's it's $2. But it's not just $2. It's 15,000. And then it changes the maintenance of effort per child a lot more. Those are my concerns.
Right.
And that's, I kind of need to know how you guys feel about that. Which way should I vote?
If that 15,000 was going to directly to notice staff, I probably would be more apt to vote for it as against it.
No.
But we have the Wilder thing and this 2 Wilder ones, and so like the way it's spread out, are they noticed? Are they Wilder?
No,
What
it's
are they?
everybody. It's everybody. And that's the thing. I mean, at the last board meeting, we were full staff. And then, so it wasn't
all of a
even,
sudden-
it wasn't gonna benefit us. I mean, it would benefit our few employees getting that extra minimum $2. But it was all the other districts who needed 20. Now we're short 1.5. And they're not looking at the half. And that those are the things that bother me in reference to this.
And I think being in that position, I think that we're shorthanded anyway, and that we really should have two certified, and they've never provided us with that either. And now they're not providing us with another 1.5 classified. So for me, I'm like, you know what? So at some point, we got to put a stopper on that spout that
Yeah.
we just keep giving and giving and giving. And at what point do we get to keep it here in, right in this district?
And that's, I mean, at least for me, we can't do special ed ourselves.
No, we
There's
can't.
that's just not in any way, shape, or form that's unfeasible. We just don't have that kind of revenue. And so CASA does help us out. But again, playing that devil's advocate, which way do we go?
Mhm.
Can you speak to the idea of having fewer well-paid staff from CASA rather than having more well-paid staff from CASA?
It's a little trickier in special education because it depends on the individual needs of the students and their IEPs. And so, it depends on the level of program, depends on service minutes, it depends on myriad factors. So, we have a couple of students. We have one student in particular that's a NOTIS student that attends one of the shared programs that has essentially an adult with him 100% of the time that he's at school. And so that's a little bit different than we have. If we were fully staffed, we have 1.5 classified personnel for the 24-ish secondary students that are in our resource program here. So it's really hard to tell because the minutes and the services drive that, and we are required to provide that. And we have chosen to contract with CASA through our service agency to provide that, but ultimately we are still responsible for providing that if they can't.
That's the federal mandate piece that I was talking about. You're going to be mandated to serve with so many FTEs, whether you can pay them at a fair level or not. You have this kind of set number, and I don't know if all of those would be considered like mandatory, or if only a portion of those would be considered mandatory.
The service minutes and the delivery of the services is what matters. It's not specific to individual staff. So
We have to cover them no matter what. I mean, if it says on the IEP, if it says that many minutes, we have to cover it. And even if it means, stacking them all in the same room, or, us going there in that classroom and putting all of those students in that one classroom. Say here at secondary, they would need to all be in one classroom because you have one sped teacher.
Yeah.
So
I think that it's also worth noting for the board to understand that there's a certain fraction of federal funds that gets allocated for IDEA Title VI funds that come. The way that the consortium is developed is that those all go directly to CASA. They don't come through NOTIS to there, but they get a certain portion of our funds. It's not a tremendous amount, but it's probably $15,000 worth or more that they already get that are based on our NOTIS special ed students, in addition to the $290,000 we spend on special education students as well. Plus, they get all of the Medicaid reimbursements that come back from it as well.
My other question is a procedural question, and that is, I see it as an action item for this board. But I also hear that there's a vote at CASA. So I'm a little confused about this board binds us to expenditure of our taxpayers' funds. That's what this board does, or doesn't do. And in addition, there's I suppose, an action item over at CASA regarding this. And I'm a little confused if there's five districts in play here, I think, and they're not five.
Correct.
What if only one or two choose to contribute more money and the other three do not, or some combination thereof, because it's being decided at a local board level, not at the CASA board level, or at least something is.
The action item would fail at the council board meeting, therefore there would not be any expectation for it to pay through. So it's kind of a chicken or an egg. You guys can choose to pre-authorize the $15,000.
That's what's in play right now.
Yeah, if you wanted to say we would support a vote in favor of raising the CASA to this amount and give parameters up to this amount.
And that was to Rich's question, then at least 3 of the 5 districts would then need to vote in the affirmative, and that would then bind all 5 districts? So 2 districts could come there and say, we've decided not to do this, and the other 3 could bind those 2 districts and their taxpayers to that amount of money.
In theory.
And if you look,
Wow.
and if you look,
Wow.
and they're considered 6 districts because CASA has,
But they
But they don't vote.
they don't vote.
Yeah, they don't
Okay.
vote.
But if that's the case, you look at that, who's the smallest right there?
Yeah.
So we're binding the rest of our patrons to something that,
Or we may not, Nikki, is what
Well,
Dave
yeah,
was trying to get
yeah.
at is,
Originally, they were trying to say to split it equally 6 ways.
Yeah.
I said no.
no.
Like, that's
Yeah.
twice
Yeah.
as much.
so I have a question, Micah. I was thinking, I might be misinformed, so I'm asking your opinion, or not your opinion, the facts. Classified staff, get money from state government, something like that, to pay them. So if aide goes in and works with SPED students, she has to work solely with those SPED students because she gets paid that money from,
If they get
Federal
paid
state.
specifically out of the Title VI IDEA funds, yes. That's the
so
federal funds. that-
So are
that
they
CASA
ra-
receives.
are they raising, so are they raising it? That's why CASA needs to raise it?
No.
They're not.
No, that's a set finite amount of money that CASA receives that pays for a number of staff. And if they pay their staff more, then they pay for less staff out of that pool and have to make up the difference in their general fund.
And finally, Micah, this $15,000 number, that's really what's on the table in front of us. Is it a yes or no, or is it negotiable? Since they don't have 1.5 positions staffed here, and this is for classified staff, is an acceptable outcome from this board to say, well, we know you want 15 grand, but we're short 1.5 classified positions. So I'll tell you what, this month we'll authorize 13 grand. Next month, if those positions aren't filled, it might drop down to a different number. I don't know. But I know you don't want to tie those 2 issues, but they seem inevitably tied to me.
You can advise John to vote however you want John to vote. John can attest that this was a very messy situation with one of the districts in particular last year that took advantage of a good faith effort to have districts help offset the shortages by paying for it themselves and get reimbursed. And it led to a lot of legal issues and a lot of
Possible lawsuit.
lawsuits amongst the board itself with one of the other districts. And so, again, in my mind, again, if they want to vote to raise the minimum wage to their new salary scale, that's fine. But they can't obligate us to pay more after budgets have already been set, even though they're trying to say that they can.
Well, then finally, if we vote no, We say, no, we don't want $15,000 extra to go to CASA. It seems to me that the next time they come to us with their bill that's non-negotiable, it'll probably have an extra $15,000 in that non-negotiable bill.
I would anticipate that and then some.
And then some.
In for their budget hearing in June next year.
So they can, we can give them the pound of flesh now, or we can give them a pound and a half of flesh later on.
But I think
you're gonna give them a pound and a half in June regardless.
But I think we need to think about, look at a broader picture here. What else are we needing to spend general funds on? We got some other things coming up that we need to look at that have directly to do with our students. And so I think we need to like really look at the rest of what we got coming out of the general fund today. Like what we're just, not that it is coming out, but that we're going to vote on. So there's some coaches, busing, getting kids to practices or to games, and there's this other money that we could spend to buy this, to take care of that problem instead of this. Granted, it's not the same amount, but where are you gonna spend that money? For one or two people or for all the students?
But if 3 of these schools vote,
They'll bind us anyway.
we're bound to it anyway.
I think you're gonna pay it like Superintendent Raymond said, either way.
Sooner or later, we're gonna pay that money.
Right, but maybe by then we'll have the coach we need to get the kids to the games,
And maybe not.
and maybe not.
So I think what you gotta remember is that you have X amount of notice kids attending that co-op. And the legal implications say that they're to provide them with a fair and appropriate education. And so CASA's bound too, and just like you're doing, Nikki, and yours. When I went into Middleton, we made a decision to look at the possibility of whether or not we were getting enough for our money, and we made the decision we weren't. We pulled out, but we were the biggest district, and we felt unfairly carrying the load for the others. And we ended up, when we pulled out of there, saving pretty good money from CASA, but on the same token, we're big enough that we could do it. So I don't know whether Notice would have the same opportunity because of the smallness that you have of students there to do it. So I don't think that's probably a good option, but on the same token, the only advice I can give you is, yep, that's an overage of money, but it's dealing with your students.
And finally, I would like to add a comment, and that is, it's not us versus them. CASA are the good guys. We're the good guys. These are good guys and good guys, all trying to do a good thing. It's not an enemy out there. These are our collaborators, our partners in education. So we'll pay it sooner or later.
Yeah. That's a given.
Yeah.
And we should.
I can make an argument we should pay more.
If I had to place bets on the vote right now, I think it's gonna be a very close vote. I'm not certain that the 3 other school districts can afford the amount of money out of their general fund that they're being asked to pay after their Parma, Marsing, and Homedale. Those are pretty significant chunks of change for them.
It's a bus. Homedale's paying a bus for us. I mean, I'm looking too far ahead, but.
So you're thinking maybe that those 3 are going to vote against it? Is that what you're saying?
If I were a betting man, which my grandmother would say, don't ever.
Well, I heard you say something about you had talked to a couple other superintendents and they would say no. And if we said no, that's 3-2. But again.
Which means those classifieds don't get a $2 an hour raise, which means that next time the money comes out from CASA, it's going to be that much plus more and in the meantime, the students are going to suffer. It isn't like it's going into somebody's bank account. It's the students who are going to suffer because there aren't enough paras to cover it.
Well, so then really, I'm thinking that my only hang up then is, come on, give us our 1.5 and you can have it.
And they would argue that they can't hire staff.
Because the scale's too low. It's
Well,
the chicken and egg.
How many did you say, how many,
18, they're short.
they're short 18?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to work for them.
Because their scale's too low.
Yeah, and that's the thing, I mean,
Even the temp agencies say unless you're paying $14 an hour, they won't even advertise for you.
Right?
Wow.
That gets to my 1560. It's like, that's a fair wage.
Okay. Great.
This is an action item, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Doesn't have to be.
We can come back to it next time. Is that what you're saying? All right.
I just need to know how you want me
How-
to
When is
vote.
the
When will
vote
the
scheduled?
vote-
Next Monday?
Monday.
So we can't table it.
No, we can't. Well, we don't have to do an action item, I don't think. You could just tell me what you think, and you pretty much,
If you would like to authorize him to accept the terms up to that number, I would suggest an action item. If it's, you just want to wait and see till after the meeting and come back and deal with it again the next month, you wouldn't need an action item.
Well,
Well, then what does he do?
I can just sit there, I'm gladly, or I can abstain, I can.
I think for the sake of John, though, my recommendation is do an action.
give him some direction.
Yeah, that's
It's
what I'm
not
thinking.
fair to send him in
No.
the blind.
That's what
You're leaving him hanging without it.
And Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion then, based on that. And I do make a motion to authorize, trustee Baldazzo, to spend up to $15,015 on this item for CASA.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion? Guess we've already done that, huh?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
I'm gonna abstain here. Thank you.
It did pass. Okay, thank you.
And Madam Chair?
Yes.
Did we skip considering approval of an overnight cook trip?
That's next.
This next.
That's, we.
Oh, we're-
yeah,
okay.
Okay, so, here we go. Consider approval of overnight field trip. Talking to that,
Do you need?
Mr. Parker, would you like to discuss
Sure.
your trip program?
So earlier in the FFA report, there was the regional soils of Cambridge, 3 school district, or 3 FFA districts. And if you place in the top 2 there, you are invited to go to the state competition in Burley. Those are the dates, and it's up. We leave after school on the 12th, roll down there, Burley High School, the morning of the 13th, have the competition, they serve us lunch, and then we return back. I think I could get them back in time for practice. But no guarantee on that, but we can back on that. And the top 5 there at state, get to go to Oklahoma City to the big dance in May.
So how many are going? How many?
I would take 5 on that one. It would just be when I go to Cambridge, I'll take the first class, and there we will select our how the kids do. The top 5 scores will be the ones that we go to. An actual official team.
Kevin, where's the money coming from, your $200? Is it from the auction proceeds or something?
Right,
of
it'll be
nature?
that 70-30 split that we do. Really, all we've got is hotel and a breakfast.
Okay, and who's the chaperone? Is it yourself?
Yep.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Done?
I move that we approve the overnight field trip for the FFA.
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, then it has been approved, the overnight field trip, page has been signed. All right, first reading of additional ISBA policy update.
Madam Chair, these are the policies referenced earlier that I'm proposing to move to second reading for adoption at the next board meeting in conjunction with the other ISBA policy updates we've been reviewing.
Okay, so we just need to move them forward to second reading.
Madam Chair,
John,
I move that we move the additional ISBA policy updates from first reading to second reading.
do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to move these policies forward to a second reading next month. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passed. Okay, levy planning for future election. Dr. Bowser?
Thank you. I put out a timeline for your review. My consideration that I've written down through there is to look at the March date, and I put the legal timelines that associate with that. I'm going to recommend that you act upon that levy during the December meeting, even though you could wait until January. That gives us a little bit of fluctuation to make sure everything gets in, sealed, and stamped. And then in accordance with the resolution, I would, if your desire is there, I would work with financial and the attorney to once again revise that resolution to be adopted in December. The thought process is to keep the levy amount as your, continuation of thought there, keep the levy rate just where it is now, and that 203 figure that allows us to do 55%. I think that, as I observe, and I commend you board members for your positive approach upon the district moving forward. I see a lot of positiveness with your new superintendent and with your new high school principal, and I think the flavor out there is going to be different than what we've had in the past for patrons' sake of agreement that the district's moving forward. I think having 30 new students you have has been a plus. I was a little nervous that might push to the negative, but that's another positive sign that things are moving forward. So I look at it, and unfortunately, the August date, the majority of those, 1 out of 5 bonds passed, and the levies, majority of them passed that were 50, but very, very few percentages over. So just as a reminder, our cost of levy is 50 and our plan is 55 based upon that 203 amount. I would also be glad to work with you and have Nikki and I work together on updating the brochure. What I would like to see, and I did read the match report of the facility committee, but would like to have a little bit more definite feeling than with 203, as Dave said. The majority of that plant is, or more than the majority of that plant is eaten up with your custodial maintenance agreement. So that'd give us a lot of leeway to do other projects, but we still need to address, what it is. If the patrons know that levy is used to handle maintenance and custodial, they'll know that. So I'm glad, be more than glad to answer any questions you have with that. Only caveat is March a good date? I think versus November, yes. And the times I put in there for the board to consider different things are strictly recommendations that I see need to occur. So I'd answer any questions, Madam Chair, that any board members have.
Okay. Any questions?
The cost to run a levy is so low. Once we have the resolution, the financial work done, it's kind of in the bag.
Mhm.
The cost at the county is almost zero to run an election. Why not at least take a swing at this in November?
There is some cost to the county, for the ballots and whatnot, Dave, that they were gonna pass it on to the district, but, they didn't get that through. The amount of levies that pass in November is less than 10%.
But our telephone survey showed us over 70% support in this community based on your telephone survey.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think notice can be an exception to the rule.
I would recommend staying out of November, Dave. If we were to fail one or the other in March, we'd still have May and August to fall back with, for the others.
I know that's your recommendation, but the cost to this board is so minuscule to at least swing at that pitch in November.
The only disadvantage with that strategy is Middleton's experienced that. Once you do a failure, those people really rally and say, I beat you once, I'm going again at you.
Okay, a negative momentum.
And where they've had 5 losses there now, this last bond, those people that came out in the nose said, we beat you 5 times, we're gonna continue the momentum and.
In Middleton, you're talking.
In Middleton.
Yeah.
And so I don't like the idea that if we run in November and fail, then come back, Dave, in March, they've got the upper hand on us for notice. That's the thought.
Well, it's a thought,
It's a
for
thought.
sure.
So what I recommend the board do is if you feel okay with this timeline, you approve the timeline. That doesn't mean we have to follow it. At least that gives me enough of a glance there saying that, one, I know that we are considering March. Secondly, that the resolution will be redone. And third is that Nikki and I will work on revising the brochure.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I want to share with the board that I am in support of the timeline as presented. I also want to come back to what Dr. Basher alluded to in regards to the Facilities and Maintenance Committee report that talked about putting together kind of a prioritized listing at the board's approval. The Plant Facilities Fund last year, the district expended $417.5 thousand out of the Plant Facilities Fund. And so it's, a significant proportion of that was the ABM contract, but there's also an exceptional amount of other maintenance costs and grounds costs that are in excess of that fund. And so as has been discussed, I believe at the June 30 meeting where the resolution was passed, lower to $203,000. If we were to maintain that same level moving forward, we would have 1, maybe 2 years before we would not be receiving enough money to cover our facilities and maintenance costs. Currently, right now, again, the audit will give us a final number next month, but we have just shy of $400,000 carry forward, plus the 203 this year, so roughly about $600,000. If we expend another 415, we're still going backwards a little bit. If we were at the 410, as the board had originally resolved to ask for, it would make a much safer, conservative option for the next 10 years for the district to consider.
Okay, do I hear a motion on this?
Madam Chair,
John?
I move that we approve the planning for the future election as presented.
I second that motion. Discussion?
Thank you. I would like to say one other thing, and that is I'd like to ask our board clerk to add this into the board docs. Because it was handed to us tonight, but it's not in board docs. That way we can easily refer to this timeline in the future and it doesn't get lost. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I put Keith right here on mine.
Yeah, well.
That's good.
6 months from now, you're like, where was that timeline? Oh, there it is, right?
In the Keith file.
Okay, so, the motion forward is to accept the timeline that, Dr. Bausch presented to us this evening. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passed. Okay, consider declaring an emergency situation to fill teacher vacancy.
Madam Chair.
Okay.
As indicated on the personnel report, we are recommending the hire of Celia Lance to fill an emergency posting, and just need to declare that position officially an emergency posting for record to submit with her application to the State Department of Education.
Do I hear a motion?
Matt? Go ahead.
Madam Chair,
Yes, David?
I make a motion to declare an emergency situation to fill a teaching vacancy.
I will second.
Discussion? Okay, it is been moved and seconded to declare emergency situation to fill teaching vacancy. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passed, thank you. Approval of personnel report.
Madam Chair,
John,
I move that we approve the personnel report.
I second that motion. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Consider approving classified salary schedule.
Madam Chair, I need to be excused.
We will excuse you, we will let
me know.
return, thank you.
Madam Chair, I did provide the board with hard copies of the recommendation for tonight. Again, this has been a topic of discussion in a variety of different settings. And Trustee Davies has made his feelings very well known regarding
Yes.
the living wage. And there, in looking at our classified employees that have worked in the Noda School District, not only is the salary schedule fairly low, there has been a history of staff perhaps not being moved forward appropriately on the steps for their positions as well. And so this is an effort to create a new salary schedule to raise the minimum wage in Notice to $12 an hour. The difference between this and the CASA request, I think, should be noted that as a school district, the Notice School District pays the entire employee portion of medical, dental, and vision, which equates more than 50 cents an hour than what the CASA employees would raise if we approved that 50-cent raise there as well, because they actually have to pay out of pocket. So
now, excuse me just a second, is that, the $12.50, is that for the person that's the lowest on the ladder?
our recommendation is on the back. It's $12 an hour for the minimum starting wage. We currently have 5 or 6 staff members that make less than that threshold, and so the recommendation would be to move them all into that cell, and then utilize a conversion chart based on years of experience with the previous to ensure that, for example, we don't want somebody coming in brand new to the district that has 3 years of experience that gets moved to step 3, and now all of a sudden they're making $12.73 when somebody in the district who's worked here for 5 years is only making 12. So there is a conversion chart that we would likely utilize for the next 4 or 5 years regarding placement on that schedule. You'll also see on the proposed classified salary schedule an increase on the bus driver line item. I know that that has been a discussion that has been hotly discussed and debated here. Currently, our starting wage for bus drivers is $18 an hour. And so this is looking to make that a more competitive wage to hopefully draw and retain drivers there. Again, our 2 current drivers make less than that, and so they would be put into step 1 on that schedule, which would be a sizable increase hourly rate for each of them as well. Articulating on this salary schedule a couple of other things. Our classified employees are not eligible for the commitment and the longevity bonuses as have been afforded our certified staff. And so wanting to ensure that we are building loyalty with those staff as well. Those total amounts are reflective of 50% of what the certified teacher rates are for both of those stipend amounts as well. Also looking to articulate registrar stipends. So we have front office administrative assistants who do a significant amount of registrar work at the beginning and the end of the school year, packing files, moving files, the secondary level certifying files, but they're not getting paid as registrars. And so the effort there is to give them their appropriate placement on the salary schedule, but then also give them a stipend amount to make up for the extra hours of time that it takes to manage the student files. And then if you look at the last page is the financial impact for the budget. So the proposed increase to the budget is an 8% increase for salaries, a little over 5.5% increase in benefits. You actually see there that the budgeted totals amongst all funds and the salaries, actually, we still have a surplus of $12,000 after the increase on the salary schedule. But on the benefit side of things, we've historically hired several half-time, part-time employees that do not have medical benefits. And in order to help retain and recruit people, we're trying to hire them as full-time employees and provide them that benefit. And so there's a negative balance there on the benefit budget side of just under $21,000 for a total impact beyond the original budget of $8,700
Coming out of the general fund.
coming out of the general fund. Put that on your list. It should also be noted that FY23 carries 2 para positions from ESSER funds out of this year's budget. And so with those needing to be expended by September of 23, it shows a total there of roughly about $55,000 that we will need to, in order to keep the same level of classified staffing that we have, make up in our general fund for FY24.
I'm assuming, Superintendent, that their benefits increase, the Blue Cross was covered just like the certified?
Correct. Yes. The 9% increase was covered as well, yes.
I see ESSER 2 funds are being used for the 2 paras. I think that's consistent with last year's budget.
Correct.
And you said that expires in September of
23.
23. And then they're ESSER 3 funds, are they not?
Yes.
And to the tune of about $570,000 or so, if memory serves, for ESSER 3 funds. And when you talk about general fund impact, and I know they're one-time monies,
Curriculum.
some of that's curriculum. Curriculum came out of some earlier ESSER funds too, but they're
Yeah, but we're behind in everything. And if we're gonna stay with that adoption schedule, it's coming out. Something will be coming out all the time.
But you're not going to consume all of that with
No.
curriculum. And my point is that this district will soon be faced with a choice. If enrollment has to increase in order to pay the bills. If it doesn't, you're going to need a supplemental levy to pay the bills. If it doesn't pass, you don't get the increase in students, then you're going to have to decrease the number of bodies. that are being paid. That's the only way you're gonna be able to balance the books. And so my question to you, Superintendent, is, are there, you know my feelings about the hourly rate. It's still not enough. Are there positions that can be combined and consolidated so there are fewer bodies on that classified grouping?
I would like to hire 5 more on top of what we already have allocated, just from a supervision instructional model standpoint.
In a perfect world, you would like to hire 5 more.
We have combined and collapsed and I mean, all of these include our expenditures out of our title funds, out of our general fund, out of our every little bit of every dollar amount that we have that we're scraping together in order to do that. I want to articulate that I will have to look into this because the financial budget that's presented in today's meeting shows $0 in revenue in ESSER 3. And so I'll have to work with Donita to articulate if that's, if, when, how, where, what that actual number is.
Okay.
That's currently indicated at a $0 balance. And so there's,
For ESSER 3. Well, that's probably because we weren't allowed, the State Department of Ed held us back from placing it on our budget because they didn't give us permission to move it into the green light status at the district level, is how I felt about it.
so I will double check with Donita and I will send out that information in advance of the October meeting,
Yeah.
just to clarify that dollar amount.
And if some of the other, like if some of the other districts looked on those as application pieces in order to gain those, and that may be another reason why.
Potentially, yes.
On the Pirate Learning Center dinner, did we change that to a dinner? I thought that it was as a snack.
It's still currently a snack. That is the previous, it's been 2 or 3 years since dinner was provided, pre-COVID. Yeah.
Okay, so it's still a snack.
Preparing, yeah, but preparing the snack would be that wage. It might turn into a dinner if we can get staffed, because that's what's best for kids. For
Yes,
everyone to
I
see.
agree. Okay,
So the impact for this salary schedule, roughly a $2 an hour increase, is that fair to say across the board, going from $10.20 to $12 an hour?
It depends on
The step in there and the level. Just that proportion is a dip into the general funds of not quite $9,000.
correct.
And it looks like the proposed increase is roughly 8%. I see in your calculation there, Martha.
That's 8% from budgeted to expended, not necessarily 8% per individual.
Do you know what it roughly is per individual on average? Did you run a calculation like that to see, what my difference in take-home pay this year would be versus my take-home pay last year? What does that look like?
It kind of depended on where they fell. So for example, we have several staff members that are making $10.20 an hour.
Yeah.
So their new rate would be $12 an hour.
Okay,
And then we have a couple of other people that kind of fall in that same range that would be making 12, but they were making 1086 or 1117. And so they're getting a raise, but not the same percentage increase.
so they're going from 11.17 or something
To
to 12. Yeah, because the first example you gave is about a 17% increase. If my numbers are right, to go from $10.20 to $12. So that's good, but to go from 11 to 12, is going to be, whatever you said, 11.17. Right, so that was my next question, is what are the benefits worth on an hourly basis? Health insurance, we're talking about, trying to add up kind of what that benefit package roughly, I'm trying to equate that to a dollar per hour amount. See how close we are to a living wage when you throw in the benefits?
Again, it's gonna depend on, how many hours the employee works, and so,
Assume they're full-time, assume they're 40 hours a week, for purposes of my
if I speak specifically to our, classified employee paraprofessionals.
Okay. All right.
It's $6.82 an hour equivalent.
And that's made up of help me out here. The benefits they receive, health, vision, dental,
and $15,000 life insurance.
and life insurance. Okay. And of course, the social security tax or whatever that we're paying on
That
every now.
19.59 is in addition to that.
Yeah. So $6 an hour in benefits, is that what you're telling me?
For the classified paraprofessionals, yes. Again, the more days, the more hours an employee works with us over the course of the year, that number goes down per hour.
So do paraprofessionals work full-time?
They work 157 days of the year at 8 hours a day.
I
So it's
see.
1,256 hours a year.
1,256 hours. And I think your point is that other classified people work more hours than that per year.
Correct. So some of our directors work 190 days a year. Some of our bookkeeper and our IT guy work 240 days a year. So
Okay, so they would be at the most amount of days would be that classification person. And so your point is that they would all receive a health insurance benefit, but when you look at it on an hourly rate, the people who work fewer hours receive a larger kind of hourly bump for those benefits.
correct. And I think it's worth noting, as an example of how this impacts our staff. We have one of our classified employees who currently is making $10.20 an hour, requested to put her entire family on her insurance plan because they didn't have other insurance. And she would end up paying the district every month about $100, I think, in order to have
Include
her
family members.
to include her entire
So
family.
she would pay us for the privilege of working for us.
And
To gain that benefit
Correct.
is what you're telling me.
And with this new minimum wage at $12 an hour, she might take home $100 and still have benefits.
The benefit with her whole family, that's just worth it too.
Okay.
Yeah, $18 an hour, when you look at the benefit of that. At the low end.
Okay, any other discussion before we move for a vote? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the new classified salary schedule for fiscal year 23.
I second a motion.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you. Consider ratification of negotiated master agreement.
Oh, Madam Chair, one other thing before we move on. Again, this
Oh,
was,
John, come on back.
this was not a board docs. Can it please be added to board docs? It might have generated some public comment, I don't know, but it's unfortunate. But there you go, please add it.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. Consider ratification of negotiated master's agreement for 22-23.
Madam Chair.
Okay.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, we worked darn hard for a long period of time, over 10 negotiation sessions to get to this point. I understand that the teachers have ratified this agreement. And there were a number of things that were added to this year's agreement that I think our teachers should be very proud of and happy about. And obviously, they were happy enough to approve the master agreement. And they would include, some of the larger things would be sick leave benefit was greatly expanded. Sick leave language clarified that every full-time teacher is going to get 10 sick days per year. Personal leave was increased from 2 to 3 days per year. We also, for the first time in this district, have a comp time provision where if a teacher is asked to cover another class during the prep period, there'll be some way to account for that so that they can be treated fairly, right? Yeah, for using their prep time. That's the first time that's happened in this district. We've done some other things, and putting protections for teachers so that they are getting paid additional compensation if they're asked to do extra work beyond their normal duties. And they, in honesty, they speaking personally, they stretched me to my limit and a little beyond when it came to salary. But that was their job. That's what they were supposed to do because they were negotiating for the teachers, and they did a darn good job. That does, speaking about general fund impact, Nikki, without that emergency hire, now just set that aside. We're looking at it with this master agreement and impact to our general budget, as close as I can tell, to around $29,000. All right. So the state pays us the revenue, and then we have to go somewhere else to cover that difference. And we do that every year. But this year it's to the tune of $29,000 to cover this. And so it's something that each of us as board members need to consider in terms of, do we want to approve this, or do we want to send John and I and Rich back to the table? And this is a yes or no question to this board. So I wanted to make those kind of general comments, and John or I can stand for, of course, any questions that any of you have pending regarding this agreement for our teachers this year. Questions here? Okay. Madam Chair, any questions?
I trust the two.
And I want to thank the board for, this is the second year that you put me in the position to lead those negotiations. And I want to thank my fellow trustees for placing your trust in me to lead those negotiations. So thank you for that trust.
Madam Chair,
John,
I move that we approve the negotiated master agreement.
I second that motion.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, that we should. Give credit where it's due, you know.
Okay, right now, I would like to say how much I appreciate both the teachers and the board members that worked on this master agreement. I know it was very, very difficult. I followed all of the little notes and everything that came through to me. And to be very honest, I'm glad it wasn't me sitting in those chairs. So, and Dave, I especially appreciate all the hard work that you have put in on this.
Thank you.
And I know, and I especially appreciate your stop for going no further. Thank you. Okay. Consider authorization of credit debit card for school activity accounts.
Madam Chair,
Micah?
This is a request for the board to authorize the issuance of credit and debit cards for the school activity accounts for the elementary school and the secondary school. We currently have checking accounts through Capital Educators Credit Union. However, we do not have a way to make electronic payment on a variety of items. And so as current practice is, we have to use a district card using district funds to make the purchase. And then we essentially invoice the school, then the school cuts the district a check, and then the district has to deposit the check. And so we would just like the ability to have a card still managed from the business office that allows for direct purchase from the school account to Amazon. So that every time we have to buy $6 ruler, it doesn't have to be a check back and forth. So
I don't understand why.
Save a tree, good idea. Okay.
My question, Superintendent Micah, is one of control.
correct.
Right, so a debit card comes with a PIN number. The credit card doesn't. Certain people can sign for this. Now, we as a board have authorized signatures on bank accounts, but now we've got credit cards, a credit card and a debit card. We've got a business manager who's probably going to keep these in a drawer that has a lock on it.
Correct.
Talk to me a little bit about a teacher coming, getting a debit card, walking out of that, or how, talk to me about control with taxpayer funds as these credit and debit cards are moving around and doing things.
Correct. So again, this part of this is the discussion about the proposed new policy that will come around school activity accounts. But the control currently is that those cards will be maintained in the business office. They will be checked out by the staff with the expectation that they are returned by the end of business that day with the receipt to go along with a requisition form or a purchase order that has a pre-approval amount not to exceed a certain dollar amount. The issue of the debit card comes into play specifically around Costco and Winco, which are two of the most cost-effective ways for us to buy food for school activity funds like concession stands and classroom celebrations and some of those types of things. Those companies do not accept credit. And so the alternative is to send a blank check with the staff to that establishment, which makes me even more nervous than a PIN number that would go along with that.
So I'm heading up the concession stand. I need food for the concession stand. I go to Donita or the business manager and I get a debit card. She tells me what the PIN number is so I can use it at Winco. She's given me a requisition fund or limit of $200. I go to Winco. What's stopping me from spending $600 with that debit card and that PIN number at that point?
The fear of losing your job.
The fear of losing your job.
And having an ethics violation filed with the state.
Because as soon as the bill comes through, Donita's going to say, wait, requisition fund of $200, bill here on the credit card of $600. Somebody's got to come in here and do some explaining to me. Is that what happens then?
That receipt should come back immediately to Donita by the end of the day.
With the card.
With the card. On rare occasion would it stay out overnight.
That's what I was gonna say, we live way out here and we go to town to do our shopping, we don't go down to Costco. So I would say that it would need to be an overnight, some kind of overnight situation, especially if the person lives, in, I don't know, Cuna or something.
Yeah, and again, the intent is to limit the amount of twofold. The intent is to limit the amount of personal expenditure that staff are having to spend out of their own pocket currently to get reimbursed, which it's not fair to ask them to expend their own financial gain in order to be reimbursed, particularly when we're not cutting reimbursement checks until after the next board meeting.
Yeah.
So there's that level of trying to do that. And again, the intent is to implement some control that may or may not have previously been the case, while still streamlining some of our accounting processes so that we're not having to journal entry and write checks back and forth to each other. We wrote a check for less than $1 the other day. to one of our vendors because we had to.
You want to do
We
these,
spent more mailing the check and printing the check than we had to.
you want to do these things, and I see that, and I think it's a good idea, but you need to memorialize this into a policy that doesn't exist yet. Is that a true statement?
I think that our fiscal policy, as right now, does still cover the use of credit cards.
So is there a procedure that needs to be written then, Micah? Is there anything that needs to be written that isn't written now to cover the control of this action item?
I would defer to the board if the board would feel more comfortable having a written policy and procedure in place specifically around or adding this into the revision of the student activity accounts. We can do that. Again, right now, those accounts are separate from district funds, but still controlled by you as the governing body of the board. And so they're still bound by the same policies that the district credit cards are.
So it's your intent that these funds would only be used to draw money out of student accounts?
Correct.
No other use, just the student accounts?
Correct.
See, I think that needs to be written. I think if these cards exist, there needs to be a policy and or a procedure that governs them so that everybody is crystal clear about how these cards get used and for what purpose and blah, blah, everything we've talked about tonight and probably more. Because this is a place where embezzlement can occur so easily out of these student funds with these cards floating around. It's just, we all are crystal clear right now, but 6 months from now, it's maybe not.
Well, as indicated in my superintendent report, there's a discrepancy of $3,000 in the elementary account that has been there for some time that has never been resolved with the auditor. And if that was an accounting error or money disappearing, that's one thing. And again, there's a lot of cash that flies around this building as well that we need to shore up control of our cash collection processes as well.
There you go.
Why couldn't, I don't know how this works, but like, what about if a teacher needs something for their classroom?
They currently are checking out district cards
Oh,
and going in and purchasing them at the dollar store and utilizing the tax exempt status, bringing the district card back. The same process that we just explained for the student account.
Okay.
But then if it's classroom activity funds and not district supply funds, then Donita has to give Roseanne a form, and then Roseanne has to write a check for Donita to deposit in the bank because we use the district card for that expenditure.
that's great.
Another safety net that Micah can do that we did in Middleton is put a limit amount on the cards. Secondly, put an okay on it that the card company sends Donita a text saying X amounts approved. You want this to be approved or disapproved? And
In real time.
in real time, and she can easily do that, and that prevented, I don't know, during my 15 years, I had no embezzlement of any card, no over expenditure of those cards, and they work well. But as you say, Dave, I know surrounding districts that people were fired from using the credit card for personal items. So it can be done.
Tickets to the football game.
Yeah, or concert.
Except
But
for,
I think those two safety nets that Micah could do are good ones that I implemented, and it made the process good.
except for if Donita is in the bathroom.
Well, it can go to Micah, I can put 2 or 3 on them if you want.
There is a paper control process in place right now that Donita has utilized it as the business manager at CASA for years. That meets the auditor's expectation for pre-authorization. So, in my understanding, I'm not sure that pre-authorization requirement has been a practice in Notice to the extent in which Donita is insisting upon it. And additionally, with the hiring of the business office assistant, once we get somebody to replace Roseanne in the elementary school and I can move her into that position, then there's double set of control within the business office as well. And so it's not just Donita herself, that there's multiple people and multiple process. But we can definitely articulate that in a flow chart or in a procedure
Yeah.
for review at the next board meeting.
I think Donita needs to be a part of that because she's the one, that ultimately everything runs through. So I would say that we should have Donita be part of creating the flow chart or.
Oh, it's her, it's all her process,
Yeah.
trust me.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Just let her say, okay, this is the way we're going to do it, or this is the way she thinks we should do it, and then we approve or not that process.
I think the procedure is kind of a good idea because then, she has that and all she has to do is go to that and say, this is the procedure and you know this, you have to follow the rules.
Or you don't get to use it.
Yeah, well, not even this time.
Yeah.
So, okay,
Madam Chair,
John, no, Dave,
I do see this as an action item, and so I do make a motion to defer action on this until the next regular board meeting. At which time a policy or a procedure can be drawn up and presented to the board along with this request for authorization.
If we do that, that's a whole month,
Please.
what's it gonna hold up? You
Just
guys,
business as usual.
dollar checks.
$1
Kill a
checks.
tree.
do I hear a second?
I have another question. Could we put on there, with your motion, could we say something like, pending policy set up by Donita? Or whatever, procedure set up by Donita.
Madam Chair, I don't know that it's necessary to do that intentionally. I think it's just, the item can just be tabled for the next meeting.
Can we have a full package to really look at? Authorizing the cards and a procedure and policy to go along with it. It's gonna package deal.
With that, Madam Chair, I will second.
Okay. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Pass. All right. Consider approval of continuous improvement plan for 22-23.
Madam Chair. Included in the board docs for tonight's meeting is a draft copy of the continuous improvement plan up for consideration for submission by the district to meet the October 1st deadline. Again, this is something that typically would have been reviewed earlier in the summer, but with the transition in leadership and staffing has run a little bit late. It is anticipated that there will be a lot of discussion with stakeholders, including teachers, parents, regarding the information within this plan. The narrative itself is not much changed other than it has been much more streamlined from previous versions. The metrics, however, are what I would like to draw everyone's attention to, just specifically to look at there are 3 tabs. Let's see if I can. This did not include, sorry, I gotta pull up another form. So this metric tab shows last year's target compared to this year's target. I also have documentation that shows the report of our performance based on last year's target. It's specifically telling when you get down into section 2, section 1 and section 2 regarding some of our goals. the narrative outlined and has for some time that the desire is for the students in the Noda School District to score within 10 points of the state average. In several cases, that 10 points within the state average is still less than 50%. It's my assertion and our discussion at the leadership level here that aiming any lower than 50% is unacceptable, regardless of what the state average is. And so in several of those indicators, you'll see that 50% is chosen there. That may be greater than 10% within the state average or less than. I'm going to try and add in another file into the board docs real quick. Bear with me. Okay, it should be there, Jen. So it's important to note that it's very challenging, can be very challenging when talking about achievement data, specifically because it tends to become a very personal feeling, both for parents and for community members and for teachers. As educators, we are just engineered to take our job very personally, and data often can come across as very negative and not very morale boosting. And so I just want to be intentional in stating that this data is non-judgmental. It purely is what our data is, where it is. It's not indicative. There's no value judgment placed on how we got to this point. But there are some telling data points here. The State Board of Education for years has made an area of emphasis early literacy, K through 3. They are also making a renewed effort to tackle math 5 through 9. Any middle school math teacher will tell you that middle school math starts in kindergarten and first grade with basic number sense as well. And so, particularly when you look at our percentage of 8th graders who scored proficient or higher on their math exam last year, the target for the district was 48%. Our average was 19%. We had 19% of our 8th graders moving proficient or higher on the ISAT in math. These metrics also take into consideration what's considered adequate growth. So that's basically taking the cut score for proficient from the year previous to the year in which they're in, and anybody who showed that much growth or more is considered to make adequate growth. So in particularly, if a student is below basic, they can make adequate growth and still not be proficient. And so it's important to note there that number hopefully should be higher than your total number of proficient, because we're seeing the metric move for that as well. And so you can see where 19% of our students were proficient or higher, 31.6% of our eighth grade students, same group of students, showed adequate growth. So while the numbers are indicative of rather low proficiency scores, they do show kind of what we would expect to see between the percentage of proficient versus the adequate growth numbers there. These metrics have been provided comparison for everything that's included on the other metric page that we submit. I want to specifically commend the sixth grade last year. And the sixth grade teacher has left, but sixth grade was one of the areas where our students met our targets for last year in both math and ELA. The target goals for IRI selected for last year were rather lofty in the sense that, kindergarten reading 80%, and looking at 42% of our kindergartners met that target of being proficient on their IRI, feel that it's much more reasonable to expect, we can hope for 80%, but be able to select an achievable target goal of 55%, which is much more in line with the state average there as well. You can see again that second grade, while they didn't meet their target, showed that 63.6% of our second graders met their proficiency standard on their IRI, which should be celebrated as well. And then one of the other indicators that it's not a required indicator from the state, but the notice selected, was that the percentage of students that showed 20% growth from fall to spring on their local progress monitoring tool. 67.5% of our students showed 20 points or more growth on that tool at the elementary level. So again, even though that our proficiency numbers are in the 30s and 40s, we are seeing some growth in our students. It has been a challenging 2 years because of COVID, particularly if you look at our second graders this year. All they have known is COVID interrupted school. And so it will be telling for us as we look at that group of students. They are our first graders last year that were at 47% proficient on the IRI. But these are the metrics, again, as previously discussed with the board. We want this to kind of be an ongoing topic of discussion, and how do we utilize this to inform our instructional practice? How do we raise our level of expectation and rigor with students while simultaneously raising the bar for our teachers as well, without it becoming a negative impact. Everyone is working very, very hard. This is not indicative of the level of effort that is being put into school, but we do have some discussions to be had around quality of instruction and quality of assessment. I'll stand for any questions. Trustee David.
In part of your narrative, Micah, you said, well, what we achieved last year meets the state average, or was very close to the state average. I heard you say that several times during your narrative just now. It would be so helpful to have another column out there that shows, well, this is what we achieved, and here's what the state average is. I'd like to see that kind of go side by side. If we're looking at data, right?
My intention in October is to bring kind of a fall comparison with our fall data at the elementary level to specifically show that direct comparison both within the district and at the state and other local districts, if I can get access to that information as well.
And then I'd like to just make a general comment, and that is to say, we've got a great master agreement in place with our teachers. We've got great curriculum, either here or coming. COVID is behind us. We've got a great superintendent sitting over here. It seems to me that this district is ready to meet these goals. I really feel that this district should be able to hit on all cylinders, meet these goals, and be the envy of the school districts around us. And when that happens, that'll be part of the solution, in that the student population will rise. people will want to come here to go to school because all those cylinders will be hitting. So I think this district is poised for greatness. And this is one of the ways it'll be measured as a general comment.
Dave, on that, I had a knock on my door the other day. I opened the door, lady ran out of gas. She needs, a ride down to get some gas. I talked to her on the way. She lives in Notice. She lives in the Notice School District. She works in Middleton and her daughter goes to Middleton. And I say, I would really like to see her go to Notice. Well, there's not a rodeo club. So there's things that,
Yeah, things you can't overcome. But on average, this is one thing, and I feel this board has done a lot to try and set this district up for success.
Oh,
And I
yeah,
think
I
that it can be
I agree
measured.
with that. But some of them, like, we can do all that we can do and like meet the goals. And for me, I'm all about growth. I want to see growth. I don't care if it's 5 points.
No, we got
For
one
me,
next
that's growth. And I agree with what you say, or what you just said. But
So just a general comment, but I would like to see those state averages kind of compare side by side to tell a more complete story.
Absolutely. And with that, I would just ask the board to approve this for submission to the State Board of Education.
I hear a motion.
Madam Chair,
John?
I will move that we approve the continuous improvement plan for 2022.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed. Thank you. Consider approval of transportation routes zone per policy 8120.
Madam Chair, this is a policy that we're required to review every year, just to review our transportation routes and zones. This includes our safety zone, our non-transportation zone, as well as our bus routes. Previous practice had been to post the bus routes on our website. However, a significant number of our bus stops are home addresses and specifically articulate what time children are being dropped off there. And so in an effort to not provide that information to the general public, several of the documents for tonight's meeting are in your administrative content area of board docs rather than in the public facing side of that. This is just a quick snapshot of our non-transportation zone. So these are the houses where we do not send buses to pick children up.
Okay.
So right across the street, everything else within a mile and a half of our zone is considered a safety zone. There is a metric measurement tool that's used, that's also included in board docs under the administrative side of things.
I don't know if that's so.
So, okay.
Mr. Cody Bumpy.
That basically just kind of articulates how much traffic is on this road. Are there sidewalks? Are there shoulders? Are there elementary kids walking down this road? And there are, between here and the city hall, for example, there's narrow shoulder with no sidewalks. And that's the equivalent of X number of points on this measurement scale that articulates why we're designated something a safety zone. We have to be able to designate that in order to receive reimbursement funding from the State Department of Transportation. They designate everything within a mile and a half as a non-transportation zone unless it meets the safety zone criteria. So you see roughly there a mile and a half circle from our campus goes all the way out past the river, past the tracks, down Howe, or Boise River Road maybe. And so, obviously, walking that distance across the river, across the railroad tracks, those are unsafe conditions. I state this and I remind you of this. This has been a topic of discussion with the city around potential development in the community, around the impact that it will have if, when, as they add developments and add streetlights and sidewalks. if the proposed developments come in both here, kitty corner from Camp, or I guess it's just directly across the street from here, and the one in town, if those both came in and provided that area, about 50 kids that currently ride the bus to school, the half mile from town would have to walk or ride their bike to here. They would no longer qualify for safety busing in that sense. And so this is just asking you to consider approving our transportation routes and zones as per this policy for this coming school year.
Okay,
Madam Chair,
John?
I move that we approve the transportation route zones per policy 8120.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll say that.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you. Consider approval of policy 3270F1 to support one device usage.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
This is a culmination of work of Ms. Wright and Mr. Robinson, our IT tech, and Ms. Coles and a handful of other people as well. Previously, the district has purchased devices for students to use that have roughly 300 devices that have never been deployed to students. And in order for us to create conditions in which we felt that it was available for us to deploy those to students for use one-to-one, we needed to bolster our policy by creating this additional form to our policy 3270 and develop a Chromebook program handbook. This policy and handbook are modeled after CUNA in Middleton, who have similar programs in place. The essential intent is for us to check out Chromebooks to 7th through 12th grade students for use for instructional purposes, allow for them to pay an optional replacement donation charge in case of accident or damage, and allow them to potentially, if they have a Chromebook checked out to them in 7th grade, if it is still functioning and it's still the original Chromebook when they graduate, it's obsolete at that point from our inventory perspective, that we can send it with them to any post-secondary school as well. And so this is just in order for us to deploy these and to start. Currently, our students do have one-to-one checked out, but they have to check it out every morning from their first period teacher and return it every afternoon to their first period teacher. And it just is a little bit cumbersome from a student management perspective. So the intent here is to check out a Chromebook, a charger, and a protective sleeve, similar to the Chromebooks that will be checked out to you later tonight, for every student 7th through 12th grade. It is worth noting that those Chromebooks are still monitored by Notice, and so that there are still some parental controls, guidance. They can't just go willy-nilly, no matter what internet they're connected to. Even if they're at home, there are certain things that they're restricted from accessing. So we're just asking for the approval of this policy and the handbook.
Sorry, Madam, or Mr. Superintendent. Sorry, I couldn't remember what the hell I was saying there. You stated something about a replacement insurance or something?
Not insurance, no. It's an optional accident donation pool. So they can choose to donate into the pool, that if there's damage, we have funds to be able to replace that. If they choose not to, then they would be responsible for the full price of repair or recovery.
All right.
And Micah, you said something about post-secondary education, that they could use it for that as well. Is that assuming that they're still enrolled here as a student, just doing kind of classes in both, or after they graduate from here, they can take it with them?
This would be if they receive a a Chromebook when it's issued to them in seventh grade, and they've maintained its proper use for 6 years. The average expectancy for Chromebooks is 5 years, right? So if it's still in use at 6 years, they graduate, then we would obsolete that and we would send that.
Gift it to them.
Gift it to them.
And,
They will have earned it.
say I'm a student, I have a Chromebook, and can the district locate that Chromebook? Can we, do we want to be able to say, oh, your Chromebook's over at your grandmother's house? It's located right here.
We do not have a Find My iPhone app for Chromebooks.
So if it gets lost,
so
they're
it's-
financially
They're
responsible
financially
for it, right?
responsible for it. Same with the charger that goes with it as well.
That will be the thing that they lose the most.
The charger.
The charger.
Oh, yeah. Miss, I don't have my charge. I forgot to charge.
We will still have Chromebooks for checkout here in the library for daily use, that they can check out for the use for the day and return if they forgot their charger or left it in their car or don't have their charger and their battery died, so that they can still function and they can still do their learning for the day.
And they're governed or limited so that unlimited internet access or appropriate educational stuff only is happening on these Chromebooks,
Relative, yes,
as much as can be monitored.
as much as can be with the school licensing, yes. Yes, and we are implementing a third-party monitoring system that will monitor both their email and their Google Drive accounts for adverse social emotional communication.
Okay. Can I put any programs or apps on this computer that I choose to? I have to have an admin password to add stuff to.
Correct.
Okay.
You're essentially limited to the internet and what the internet filters for the school allow you to access.
Madam Chair,
John?
I move that we approve policy 3270 F1 to support one-on-one device usage.
I'll second that.
Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passed, thank you. Okay, consider the purchase of activity buses.
The big item for the night, this is what's kept everyone here, right?
This is where I'm gonna.
Big jump.
Have something to say.
So, as has previously been discussed, we have a transportation crisis in our district, specifically related to after-school activity transportation, having enough drivers and buses available and or willing to provide extracurricular transportation, including such as this Friday, I'm not sure, and Saturday, I'm not sure how we're getting the volleyball players to their volleyball game, even this week. So part of the trick in this process is to seek approval while having actual vehicles to approve for purchase. So I have placed these two vehicles on hold pending board action tonight. They know that it's pending board action tonight. These are two 14-passenger, they're identical, two 14-passenger wheelchair accessible transit vans. You do not need a CDL in order to drive these. They do have slight discoloration on the side where the previous decals were located. They are relatively new compared to other vehicles out there. And they are $39,999 each. We have a couple of options if the board chooses to move forward with this, is that we can pay for them outright, and it will roughly be $80,000 plus some fees and license and registration. We did look into financing with Capital Educators, which is who we do our banking through. 4.5% interest, and it was still almost $20,000 for the first year, and then basically $20,000 a year for the next 5 years. So we would actually, I guess it would be a little less than that. The total was about $100,000. So if we finance it, we end up spending an extra $20,000 over 5 years than if we were to pay for them outright. The consideration for two, besides that they match, is that we have several sports teams who have more than 14 students. And in order for us to transport the entire volleyball team, if we get more than 14, we have to put them on a bus, which requires a CDL and a driver in order to do that. If we had these two buses, we could send the two coaches with 14 students in each bus, and they could transport that. We also can utilize these vehicles for additional use for non-reimbursable routes that we are already currently running, such as our preschool routes that we're running in the middle of the day, our after-school Pirate Learning Center routes, which are non-reimbursable as well if the buses are available for that as well. We have a field trip to Burley coming up in the middle of October with 5 students. Right now, the option is to send Mr. Barker, because he's a CDL bus driver, with a full-size bus to Burley for 5 students, if we have a bus available, because we have buses in the shop. So there's some of that there too. So I know that this has been something that has been discussed in theory with you guys as a board and as a community. This is me bringing it to you with a practical solution that if the board were to approve this, we could cut the checks, fly 2 people to Seattle, and have them here by October 1.
How do you propose to pay for this?
Yes. There's again, currently based right now on the unknown around the ESSER 3 account. There could be a reallocation of funds in ESSER 2, as well as about half and half ESSER 2 and half out of the general fund. If there's additional money available in ESSER 3, as the discretionary funds would allow, we could expend those as well.
So I've been adding stuff up. And not including the 57,000 for the cost of levy funding. I'm not sure I quite understand whether that 57,000 is coming up, so I didn't do anything with it. We all have already approved $78,736.69 tonight. So this is another 100,000. That's a lot of money to spend in 4 hours.
Not even.
I'm dying. However, when the minute I saw this, I was like, we gotta do that. We pretty much don't have a choice. Because we can't get bus drivers. Our buses are evidently in the shop. Gas is way too high.
Diesel's even higher.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what I'm doing.
Gotta do it. That's what she's thinking.
Is this considered quasi bus for bus reimbursement?
It'd have to be painted yellow.
Doesn't look ball, huh?
Actually, no, it wouldn't matter if it's painted yellow or not, because it doesn't have stoplights on it and a swing on.
You're not
So
gonna
no,
get-
we're not getting any reimbursement for these at all. This is purely to solve the problem that has been presented to this board multiple times with multiple people around extracurricular activities. The fact that we have not been able to do field trips because of lack of drivers or lack of available buses. Field trips would be a reimbursable expense. But again, if we're taking a field trip of 5 students, the cost offset of sending 5 students in this vehicle versus having a large bus go and get reimbursed is kind of an offset.
You're gonna share them through Morton?
Correct.
How much is that?
I couldn't tell you offhand right now.
So Mike, I'd like to ask questions around two areas here. The first area has to do with our existing assets, I mean buses. How many do we own?
8.
We own 8 yellow school buses over there?
Correct.
Okay, how many of those yellow school buses are currently fully certified, running, in good shape? 3. So we have 5 that are needing some amount of work,
I have 2 that are currently in the shop.
and apparently 3 more that need to go in the shop.
If it's cost effective to send them to the shop, yes.
Okay, let's just say for a minute that you did send all 5 to the shop and you got them all running. And they're all certified and they can all take students. They're worth something, are they not?
Yes.
And other school districts or other bus companies,
Pennies on the dollar at auction.
but they're an asset.
They are.
And they're an asset that obviously we're not using because we have 5 of them over there that aren't running currently. And you,
We have no drivers.
and we just approved bus routes. How many bus routes did we just approve?
It's effectively 4 bus routes that have been condensed into 2 because we only have 2 drivers.
All right, so at the very most, this district needs 4 bus drivers and 4 operating yellow school buses. And we own 8,
Plus 1 in reserve. So
plus
5.
1 in reserve, and we own 8. So it seems to me that part of this, even if it's pennies on the dollar, we should be looking at assets that we currently own that we should liquidate to help offset something that we need for a good reason, rather than just accumulate more.
That is currently in discussion with the transportation department as they're providing the analysis as to what it would cost to do those. Of the 2 buses that are in the shop, one is a transmission issue. It is under warranty, but we're about 9 weeks out from it getting serviced. The other one is an electrical issue, radio, CD, camera system issue. It's about $8,000 to get up and running.
And then who's gonna drive it?
And then, well, and we, I think we might have just hired a bus driver I heard today, so maybe.
All right. Well,
But yes, the discussion is of those other 3, what will it take to get them operational? It's also worth noting that our routes are significantly longer than some city routes. And so we put a lot of wear and tear on our buses, particularly the fact that we're running Casa routes in the middle of the day, back and forth. We're putting a lot of miles on those.
Right.
And so even if we do get 8 of them operational, it might be prudent to keep more than just 1 in reserve.
you get my gist
I do.
regarding
I do.
existing assets that are underutilized now with
I do.
buses.
Yes.
My second line of thought, why 2? How often would we need to? When you look at this, I know we said, but my question has to do with looking at historically the field trips, the volleyball trips, and all of this, and to look how many times did we need more than 14 students on a bus?
Every time we send the football team, every time we send the volleyball team, every time we send the track team, every time we send the basketball team,
Okay,
every time we send a single elementary class.
okay. So the majority of off-campus trips, we need more than 14 students,
But less than 28.
but less than 28. So, right, so you do 2 of these, or you do a bus driver with one of our existing yellow buses. Those are the 2 choices then, right? So far, we've been doing the yellow bus with hopefully a bus driver, and we know the struggles we've had there.
So Dave, the demands on the used buses is very limited. We had 65 buses in Middleton, and when we would advertise them for sale, another district won't buy them for 10 years or older because they're not depreciatable. So they won't buy them. If the motors aren't in good shape, they won't buy them. But like the rafting outfits, they'll look at them, and they're pretty particular on running well.
Yes.
We would get 5 or 6 bid them out, and we never got much more than $1,000 for them. The newer ones in good condition, so isn't a lot of demand for those buses, but
Weigh it up.
rather than sitting them on the side of the road and deteriorating, you could get something for them.
Right.
If not, scrap metal.
Yeah.
So that's a good thought.
I just wanted to hear.
I see that the big advantage to doing this is the fact that you do not have to have a CDL driver. Therefore, the coaches could drive these vehicles, and they are available all of the time. I mean, of course, you're gonna have to.
Schedule.
Yes, thank you. And it's just convenience. I don't know. I just think it's a really good idea.
I think we've heard from the parents and that we need to do something. And I think if we really listen to what they've been telling us all along, it's pretty much a no-brainer.
Can ESSER funds be used for this?
Yes, we can.
So, Micah, the idea of not getting the yellow small one is that you need the CDL.
Correct.
The reimbursable piece of it back, might help, but again, if you can't find the driver, you can't find the driver.
Correct.
So I see where you're coming from. There's, Caldwell School District bought 5 of those small vans, different than this. Those were actual vans, and I bought one in Middleton. We ran it to 300,000 and then traded it in, got another one just for this sort of thing. And the complaint always was it was requested 24/7. And you did the second one. So I see why 2 would be advantageous. But on the same token, it's not, a lot of districts are doing this sort of a thing. There's some safety studies out on these things on slick roads. They're not sure-footed, for instance, as others, but on the same token, this one might be a little bit better than those long vans that are slippery.
Yeah, that's the intent in going with this, as well as, it's not just a standard 15-passenger van. These they have seat belts in every individual seat. There's a center aisle, so it's not like everybody's cramming in through the side door. So from an evacuation standpoint, they're safer. And again, it's added bonus that we've got the wheelchair accessibility component that we can utilize for anything that we need to in both of them. That also provide some additional storage on the inside as well.
I was gonna ask that, where we could put football gear.
They may have to tow trailer, for football gear, but there's enough space on the inside for the volleyball team to take their gym bags with.
Duals, rear duals?
I believe so, yes. They are Chevys, sorry.
Automatic.
I believe so, yes. And in talking with several of the coaches earlier in the year, we had asked coaches, we were willing to pay coaches or a member of their coaching staff to get CDLs in order to have a driver available for their program. And almost every coach laughed us out of the room, let alone just flat said no. But when approached about driving these, they were all in support of driving these instead of a full-size school bus. Yeah.
So what are your plans for, like, having certain people drive them? Like, you're gonna, like, only school employees or
Correct.
something like that?
Only paid school employees, and so it would have to be a paid member of the coaching staff.
Madam Chair,
Done.
I move that we approve the purchase of the activity buses.
I second that twice.
Any discussion?
Yes, I'd like to see the costs come out of ESSER funds ultimately, not the general fund.
Possible.
Now I think that's something that we're gonna have to kind of wait and see and figure out, but
Well, the use of those ESSER funds is discretionary within the boundaries of what the federal government has set up to this board. and the recommendations on a monthly ESSER
Right.
kind of update. And so to the extent that we can use ESSER 3 funds for the purchase,
Yeah, I'm not against it. I'm just saying we're
Yeah.
gonna have to wait and see what we can work out there. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, passed. Okay.
Okay.
Board requests of district administration. Um, is this- What is that?
Yeah.
So, board request of administration, the only thing that I have noted is just, the procedure flow chart to align with the credit debit card usage and school account activity policy review for next board meeting. Is there anything else that the, board would like me to either bring in my superintendent's report and or as a formal action item?
when we interviewed you, you talked about coffee in conversation with the superintendent on a regular basis. Now that I'm not going to be on the board anymore, I'd like to see that kind of perk up maybe
Sure.
once a month or something, so I
We
can
did,
house it.
Really?
we did take student leadership for breakfast last week, and I think I'm gonna wait until the hard freeze and the flies are gone before I go out again, so.
Okay, well, after the hard freeze and the flies are gone, I'd like to see a kind of a little notice up so that people in the public can come down and visit with you down at some public place and have a cup of something warm and talk school stuff.
I mean.
Not something, Karen, yeah.
Madam Chair.
After hours off campus, I probably still can, but you can.
I do. Yeah, okay, your unscheduled board member future items. My one that we need to do is we need to have executive session next month, and be discussing the goals for our superintendent. We gotta get that set up, so we need to be working on that. Okay, Dave?
And I brought up one earlier, just and I'll bring it up again. It has to do with, from the superintendent report, establishing a policy manual review process. I want to bring up a second one, and that has to do with budget stuff. It's come up several times tonight. Where's our general fund going? How are we going to sustain this? I contend that having a closer look, a committee, a board member, something there, taking a deeper dive into those overarching budget issues should be considered by this board.
Madam Chair, if we still need seconds, I will second both of yours,
Oh, thank
both yours and trustee Davies.
I didn't think about that. Yeah, you're right.
No worries.
Thank you, John.
What do we do about this? Assignments?
The gratification.
Mhm.
You can decide.
And just, okay, I need to trade somebody for page 7. Do you have somebody have a page 7 if they?
Signature.
You can print
Okay,
it.
never mind.
Somebody
No,
said
no,
you could
it's
print
okay, it's okay. I just made a. Okay. Then I believe we're ready.
And before we adjourn,
Yes.
I would like to thank my fellow board members for the privilege of serving on this board for the past 3 years. It's been a privilege serving with you all and with the other folks who aren't here anymore. I think of Lee and Jennifer, who I served with as well. Yeah.
Did you serve with Andy? No, you didn't.
No, I took Andy's place, but I thank you. And I'll think fond thoughts of you while I'm not here.
I'm very disappointed to see you go. I have loved your questions from day one.
Mhm.
The very first, board meeting that I watched,
Mhm.
I was in there. We were watching it on Zoom.
Mhm.
And so from that day on, and I'm gonna miss all the questions.
You're welcome to attend.
Oh, thank you.
Didn't sign up.
But you have to sign a little
I have to
paper
sign
over
a deal if
there.
I want to speak to it, right?
Make sure it's on the
And you-
agenda first.
Yeah, right. I
Limited to
didn't
5
get that
minutes.
policy change.
Okay. Before you guys leave, we have lots of little writing to do, all right? And Jessica? Okay.
Madam Chair,
John?
I move that we adjourn.
Second? Okay.
Who
All in
seconded?
favor?
Aye.
Who seconded?
Opposed?
Matt.
9,
Seconded.
15.
My turn.
Matt, you were the second, is that
Say
correct?
something, buddy. My pleasure. It's always a pleasure to serve with you.
Making me give up my Chromebook or your Chromebook?
Why did I want to get off the board?
If you don't want it, you don't have to have it.
Because you guys voted twice.